Thank you again, everyone. Appreciate you joining us today. This is the May community session for Port. My name is Jim Armstrong. I'll be your host today. I do encourage you to ask questions as we go through. You can use the chat panel or the Q&A panel, either one. If you do want to ask any questions, I'm going to start sharing so we can hop into things here. But if you haven't attended one of these community sessions before, we do this once a month. It's usually on the fourth week of the month, where we do a community session and we share the latest and greatest from Port. We'll do some live demos today. Again, I encourage you to ask questions. If you're not in our Port community Slack, I invite you to join our community Slack. You can get updates and things in there, and you can, of course, engage with our community and ask lots of questions. And again, as I say, I think in every one of these sessions, we'd love to hear from you as well and see what you're building and what you're considering for developer experience and how you ship applications, and in particular how you're using Port to do that. So if you want to share that, you can do that in the Slack session. We'd love to have you come on and join us for a community session as well and talk there with us. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. I will say as well that today's session is being recorded. So if you want to rewatch this later or you want to share it with somebody, we will make this recording available and you will be able to do that. But several things that I want to go through and share today. Some big announcements that we had in April, Engineering 360 and our AI agents. And also today, I'm going to share a little bit about our MCP server, which is new. In fact, it's kind of a sneak preview because we don't even have the blog out on it yet, but figured while we're here and while I'm messing around with it, it'd be a great time to show everybody. And it is available for folks to use. Engineering 360, we've talked about this in a couple of the community sessions. We just had a big webinar about it last week, I believe. And so we'll just touch on it here today, and I'll invite you to of course, see the full webinar if you really want to dive deep in it. But I want to make sure everybody has a chance to understand more about that. So we'll talk about those, and we'll see these in demos. I'll show you how to create AI agents, how to audit AI agents and see what they're doing and how they're responding as well, and how they can be used in our MCP server to connect to other tools. But those aren't the only things we released in April. We had several other, really important releases as well. We had some GitHub improvements, and one big one where you can now connect GitHub to multiple environments. I'll talk more about what that means. Some of our customers have multiple Port environments, so we'll look at that. Some workflow improvements and some customization improvements. We've had, a good series of these over the last several months, and we continue on that track with some really exciting updates. And we'll see these in the demos, being able to kind of get all of the approvals that are, that are waiting on you all in one place, how to customize the look and feel of Port even more, and additional sort of options there to really make Port feel like it's part of your DNA, and really call attention to the items that you want to call attention to, and really sort of make Port work for your workflows, rather than adopting your workflows for the tool. And loads of other improvements as well that we won't go into in as much detail today. New ways to look at, when you've got Swagger views inside Port, you can now see the raw JSON if you want to do a comparison there. Loads of integration updates, Bitbucket improvements, GitLab improvements in addition to the GitHub improvements. So lots of things around sort of the code repositories and code management tools. Commodore has been added as an integration. The Commodore team built an integration via Ocean, and so that's now available and listed in some additional improvements. And we've hired an additional tech writer as well. So you'll see a slew of new guides available in Port, and they continue to come very quickly. So even what you see here today is just a small sampling of the new guides, and I'll show you those at the end. But let's dive into to these improvements in Port. So Engineering 360, again, I'll just touch on this and I'll show you in the demo briefly. Engineering 360, we covered this a little bit last month. And then, as I mentioned, there is a full webinar that we did on Engineering 360 to really dive into use cases and things. So I will just touch on it here. Essentially, Engineering 360 import is the way that we help you to figure out what the bottlenecks are, what are the pain points that you can solve within your platform, and use port to solve those bottlenecks. And there are multiple ways that we can help you determine that. One is via metrics. We're connected to so many different tools across your platform that being able to determine things like release frequency, the time to release, the time to respond to incidents, all that data is collected into port. And so being able to expose that data, those types of metrics to determine, overall sort of productivity and engineering speed is something that's naturally available through port. And with Engineering 360, we help to expose that and make it very simple for you to start creating those types of dashboards and get those views. And you can do that across the entire organization. You could do it down at a team level. You could do it at a service level. There's all kinds of places you might want to look at those metrics, and you can do that inside of port. And of course, we have loads of detailed metrics. If you want to start peeling back the onion from there, you can, of course. But that's just one part of the equation. The metrics are helpful to see and to be able to look at one team's performance, and if the work you're doing and the initiatives you have in place are improving things over time. But also part of it is collecting direct feedback from the people who are doing the work, which often is the engineers themselves, but could be loads of other people that are involved in creating and releasing software or managing and governing software in your organization. So by running surveys, you can collect that feedback directly from them. You can figure out what they are struggling with or what they don't like about the software development and release process, which becomes obviously a huge source of data for figuring out what to fix in port as well. And so those two things really play nicely together. You get the good qualitative feedback directly from surveys, and whether it's about developer experience or it's about standards or it's about some initiative that you're running and you want to collect feedback on that. And then you get the hard metrics, the data points from all the different tools and things like that. Putting those two things together really helps to solidify the plan. And then, of course, you can design those process improvements and standards and workflows and automations in port to solve those problems, and then, see the improvements come through in the report. And then you, of course, repeat that cycle. A lot of teams that we find when they first dive into port tend to start somewhere else. They tend to start somewhere in the middle. And, it's easy to get excited about the types of things that you can do with port and started connecting a bunch of different tools into port. We see people that have created, some really cool sounding automations and things, but they don't really solve the problems that their users are having, and then they can't figure out why their users aren't using those cool automations and actions and things that they've built into port. And so by starting earlier and collecting those metrics and the feedback, you can figure out what those biggest pain points are and go through and start solving those instead of starting in the middle. So we'll dive into this a little bit in the live demo as well. With Engineering 360 today, what you get out of the box is DORA metrics and surveys, and you can easily create both of those in port. We have what's now called an experience that's available in port, so you can go in and create, click the new DORA metrics experience tile, and we will create those dashboards for you. You can do the same thing with surveys, and you pick the type of survey you want to run, and we will create the survey for you. And then you can, ask your users to go and fill that out. So it makes it very simple to get started with these. It's still port on the back end. So if you don't like the way we measure deployment frequency, you can, of course, customize and change it to make it fit the way you actually think of deployment frequency. But we'll give you a good starting point in the dashboards to begin that process. Same thing with surveys. There's some canned surveys, and we have some guides on additional surveys you can create. You can always tweak and tune the questions. You can always tweak and tune the response options, and you can create your own surveys from scratch if you want to do that as well. So these really give you a good place to get started. But of course, you can make port your own. So we'll take a look at that in the demo here in just a second. Before I hop into the demo, I'm going to talk through a couple other things first as well. So I do want to talk a bit about AI agents in port. Really, I think one of the number one things about this is just creating new ways to interact with all of that data that is in port. There's so much that comes into port about about the services and apps and deployments and all the different tools in your platform and how things are connected, tickets and pull requests, and just everything from across all those different tools that are out there. And for some people that can be overwhelming amounts of information. It's great that it's there, and if I know where I'm going, I can click through it. But in a lot of cases, I just want to get an answer quickly, and I just want to have an easy way to search through that and find the results I want instead of manually trying to click through it. And so AI agents provide a new way of interfacing and interacting with Port. You, as the platform team, can design these AI agents. So you can determine what types of things you need agents to help your users accomplish or help yourself accomplish. And you can design those in Port. And you can set controls on what those agents are allowed to access in Port, what types of blueprints, what kinds of actions they can take. And you can build all the kinds of prompts and things around those and how they should respond. Of course, it's tied into the end users access as well. So by using these agents, you're still only giving the end user and that agent that's using the agent that end user is using only has access to what that end user has access to. So you still have all the access controls and permissions there that belong to that user. But it does help to search things much quicker. And there are new ways you can interact with Port, of course. So you can come into Port. You could have an AI agent widget in Port, and we'll see that in the live demo, and you could interact with it that way. You can use a Slack app and connect that to Port, and you can interact with the agents in Slack. So as a user, you would never even have to maybe log into Port. You could just interact with it that way. And then the MCP server, which I'll touch on in a minute, gives us even more options for integrating with Port. So the MCP server, as I just mentioned, again, that way to sort of connect other AI tools into Port so that they have access to all this rich and good data that Port has, including, these AI agents, but they can also access things like blueprints and entities and all those sorts of things in Port. The nice thing about this in this interaction, again, there's a layer of authentication here to make sure that those end users are accessing things that they are permitted to access and nothing else. So that's important. But also, Port is more than just the collection of tools. It does have your standards and your initiatives that are in place. So you want to know the right way to do things, then that should be built into Port as well. You can have the actions and automations built into Port. So the agent on the far end, like Cursor and VS Code, can use the actions and tools that are available in Port rather than trying to invent some different way of doing it that may not follow your standards. And so all of those things are built in. And so Port really becomes this nice sort of central control plane for how these actions can run and what data can be done. And all these different tools that folks are using now have a nice, easy way of interacting with that through Port. The URL is here. The Port MCP server is open source. You can take a look. You can start using it on your own if you want to. And so it is a preview. It's pretty much all MCP servers are these days, but it does offer the ability to connect in these tools. And I'll show you that in the demo here in just a minute as well. A couple of other things to touch on real quick. As I mentioned, we have some customers who have multiple Port environments, and the reason they do that is they will have a development environment where they're testing things and they're building new self-service actions and automations, and they don't want to, potentially do any harm to their production data, so they do that in a development Port environment. They may have a staging environment where they do sort of their final checks and tests, and then a prod environment. Whatever the case may be, they have multiple environments where they keep the sort of production live view separate from sort of the testing instances. And now with this new GitHub app option, you have the ability to connect one GitHub account to multiple Port environments. If you're familiar with GitHub and GitHub apps, generally you're limited to one GitHub app per organization. We now have the ability to create a custom GitHub app. So you can use Port's pre-built GitHub app, and then you can create your own custom GitHub app, and that will allow you to connect to the same GitHub organization actually multiple times. So if you have these multiple environments, you can test with the same data and then build that in production. So nice option for people who are building out those multiple environment setups. And we see that fairly often. As I mentioned before, too, we now have integration with Commodore for those who are Kubernetes users, which is a lot of people these days. Commodore is a really nice management and sort of administration tool for Kubernetes. Really big for developers to be able to troubleshoot things in Kubernetes without having to get into all the Kubernetes weeds and necessarily be Kubernetes experts. So you can see an example of the integration here, where inside the port software catalog for this authorization service, we're showing various Kubernetes events and statuses and health information that's coming in from Commodore. Now, if I'm not a Kubernetes expert, and I'm certainly not, but I see unhealthy here, and I might not know what to do about that. Certainly, I could drill in and get some Kubernetes logs and things like that. But again, that's probably not going to help me if I'm not much of an expert. But Commodore has a nice troubleshooting tool, and they all have their own AI called Claudia as well. And so I can start to investigate that by clicking this button here, and it will guide me through the process of fixing the issues that the Commodore is finding. So really nice integration there, where it's not just giving you the health and the status of things, which is clearly very important, but also helping you to diagnose issues and troubleshoot those issues and fix them on your own. So that you can take care of things much quicker. So really nice integration there. And the Commodore team built that using Port's Ocean integration framework, which is something that you can use as a customer as well. All right, let's do some demos. So I am going to start. I'll start right here, actually. And so, as I mentioned early on, we have this thing called Engineering 360, which is now available through this experience widget. So if I'm looking here in my port catalog, I'm here at the catalog page. I have new up here in the top left. And if I click that new button, catalog page, dashboard folder were there before. Now we have this experience option that's available in Port. And if I click that, there are 4 experiences that are available, but Engineering 360 is right here at the top. So if I want to add Dora Metrics dashboards to this instance, I can simply click here, give it a title, and it will create those. Now, I will say in this instance, I'll show you the live instance here in just a second. In my instance, I don't have any incident management tools plugged in, and therefore this really wouldn't do much for me, so I won't click through all the way on that one. But the same would be true for surveys. So I can pick the type of survey I want to run, and we have several that are sort of canned here and ready to go. I can give it a name. These are all blueprints, right? So in the back end of Port, if you're familiar with it, we have a survey blueprint, we have survey questions as a blueprint, and we have survey runs. So if I want to run a survey quarterly, for instance, and compare results from one quarter to the next, or year over year, I can compare those in different runs. But this is giving me the ability to just create that survey without having to know all those details. I don't have to mess with the blueprints. I don't have to mess with any of the entities or manual creations. I can simply click create, and I will have surveys available here in Port. You can see a survey that I have created. Maybe I haven't created one here, actually. So let me switch over to this environment where we can see that. So let me show you the Dora metrics first. So we went through the actual Dora experience, and I had, incident management tools and other tools that are required to actually generate all the Dora metrics. You would see something like this. So we have, the big 4 Dora metrics: deployment frequency, mean time for response, mean lead time for changes, and change failure rate. All built in here. You can see the number charts in terms of the weekly average and the monthly average and in those charts. And then we can see the line charts over time as well. You get this all out of the box. Again, these can all be tuned and tweaked to fit what you need. You'll notice here that this is a pink and it says needs improvement. That's a customization that we can do. You can set the goals and the targets, and you can make this appear red if it's not good enough, or yellow or green or whatever you color scheme you prefer. So you can customize these things. You can determine what deployment frequency or how deployment frequency is actually measured in your organization if you don't agree with the way that we've done it in sort of the out of the box method here. So again, all of this is still customizable, but this gives you a good starting place to jump in. Now, I mentioned too that we can look at DORA metrics, not just at sort of the whole organization level or whatever part of the organization I can see as the end user. In this case, it's everything. But I could look at this at a team level. If I wanted to see DORA metrics by service, I could see DORA metrics by service as well. So all kinds of things we can do there to start measuring and tracking over time, how we're impacting the engineering organization or an engineering team or a service team, an app team, however you sort of build your organization. But you can measure those DORA metrics. So you get that out of the box with the engineering 360. The other is the surveys, and you can see here some survey responses that have been tracked, and we're just basically collecting from the surveys that was run the actual responses here. So let me see if I can find, there's a actual survey for, oh, here it is. Yep. So there's a port developer productivity survey, and if I want to run that survey or respond to that survey, I can do that here. It's a self-service action. So however you run self-service actions, you can use that to respond to surveys here. And of course, you can build out multiple pages and collect that feedback. So that's Engineering 360 in a nutshell. Again, there was a full webinar on that last week, I believe, and definitely encourage you, if that's something that you're interested in and want to learn more about, to check out that full webinar. All right. One more thing I'll show you. I do want to show you on Engineering 360. We've touched on this before too, but it's really interesting to start taking these things and overlaying them with additional information that is, could be potentially part of your organization. One that we hear a lot is things like, the use of AI coding tools and other tools that are meant to help productivity, or tools that are meant to help respond to incidents, or tools that are meant to help with any of the sort of big four metrics or whatever metrics are important to your organization. And you can take those and you can, use the DORA metrics that we have, and you can overlay that with things like Copilot usage and statistics on what teams are using Copilot, how frequently they're using Copilot, and really start to see whether the usage of Copilot tracks with improvements in your productivity metrics. So we see here our mean time to recover has held fairly steady. It's increased slightly here in the last month. We see as well that deployment frequency is ticked up a little bit, but then has had a slight decrease again, in May. But I can see that, how that kind of tracks with the use of Copilot, and I can start to determine, whether Copilot is actually having an impact on my engineering organization or not. It's not limited to Copilot. This is a really nice example. It's a tool that loads of people are using, and all kinds of other tools that people are using. Really, any of those could be used in here to be able to track and measure and compare and see what's really driving improvements and what's not, and how those things are correlated. So a really nice example of kind of using metrics in that type of information in a more targeted use case. All right, let's talk a little about AI and AI agents. So I'm going to first flip to a different instance here of Port, and we will take a look at some AI agent use cases. So first thing you're going to see here is we've got a different style of login. We're really kind of got the AI agents focused here at the top. And we've got some agents that are pre-built here in Port. We've got one called the Task Manager AI agent. We've got one to look for ownership of services. We've got one for deployment status as well. And if I'm going to refresh this page actually and see, may or may not actually be logged in here. It's been a while. Let me make sure. But you'll see in some of these too, like this deployment status agent, we have some conversation starters as well. So if I wanted to see what's currently running in production, I could just click the conversation starter, or they're just agents. I could ask questions, right? And you'll see it'll start to, do what agents do and give you its sort of running details about what it's doing, what it's thinking, and how it sort of arrived at these answers. So in this one, I asked what's currently running in production. The agent went off and did some work and some reasoning and said, here are the things that are running in production now: payment, checkout, and catalog. In the task manager, I can ask what are my to-do items today, see what that one's able to come up with. And you'll see it's going through and searching and using various tools. And so if you kind of read through this, you can see it's looking at Jira issues and other things. At this point, this user, Maya, doesn't have any Jira issues or anything assigned to them, so comes back with nothing, which is okay too. Like, it's nice. I don't have any work to do today, apparently. But let's talk about how we create these AI agents and what that looks like. So once you've signed up, so this is currently in closed beta, although if you want to have access, it basically is not much harder than asking us for access. We'll go through a couple of steps just to sort of check in and see what types of things you want to do and what you want to try and build with the AI agents, just to make sure we can help you along the way. But then once we've turned it on, you'll have these new items import for AI agents and AI invocations. So let me look at the agents first. And I'm going to start by just going through what it looks like to create a new agent and showing you that. So as you would expect, you have a name and a description, which you want to provide something useful to your users. You can turn your agents off if you want to. I'm going to turn this one to active. This is where you start to get some controls now. So I depending on what I want my agent to be able to do, I can pick which blueprints are appropriate for that action. So in the task manager agent, for instance, I probably want to have things like Jira issues. I might want to have pull requests and that sort of thing. So I could pick those and give it access to that. Well, if I have pull requests and Jira issues, then I probably need to know the GitHub user and maybe the team. Maybe I need to know Jira users as well, right? So I can kind of pick and choose what blueprints should be part of and that this agent should be accessing as part of its work. If you have an agent that can take actions, that's allowed to execute self-service actions, you can choose those self-service actions in here. You can tune the prompt. So this is the system prompt. This is sort of how do you want it to respond to the user? What do you want the output to look like for the user? This is your side of the prompt as the agent builder here. And then how do you want this to run? Do you want it to just automatically go and do stuff, or do you want it to require approval before it goes and does anything? It really depends on, obviously it depends on how comfortable you are with the agents. It depends on the type of agent a bit too. If it's an agent that's just searching for information, but isn't taking any action or isn't able to change anything, then automatic mode is probably pretty safe. But if it's something that does run self-service actions or that may potentially change information in your system, you may want to set it to approval mode. You can definitely do that. Conversation starters, just like we saw in that agent widget I was just looking at, where there were a couple of options I could click. I can specify those conversation starters here to just sort of give users some idea of what the agent can do. And then, of course, you can change emojis and all kinds of other fun stuff with it. But that's the general process of creating an agent. And you can see that we've got a few here. Now, the agents get run. And we can see, I'll go back here real quick, actually, and let's look at the status checker. So this is the agent. Again, these are all blueprints, right? So I'm looking at the front end of that, but in the back end, there's a blueprint for this agent that contains all this information. And we've got some aggregated data here too. How many times has this agent been run? There's some details about, the AI models on the back end that really are more for us, I think, at this point than anything you have to worry about, but in terms of the number of tokens that it takes to do that. And then we can see related entities. Now, related entities in this case is the agent runs. So these are the actual times that this agent has been invoked. And this is really nice because I can start to see what happened when the agent was invoked. So this was a month ago, and I can see that the agent completed. I can see what tools were called here. So this is sort of the summary view of things. I can see who invoked it. I've got the more detailed information here. So this was the actual prompt that the agent built for, combining the sort of the user prompt with the system prompt. And then the conversation history is here. The plan. So what did the agent, consider doing when it did this, when it was invoked in this case? And what are the actual tools that were called? So I can really start to see what each agent is doing. If they're not responding the way that I think they should, then I can start to diagnose that here, and I can track, who's using the agents and what types of things they're getting, and then see those responses there as well. So a nice way of being able to see these agents and really improve them over time, right? Track what they're doing and see how they do things. So again, that's one way to do it. And again, I have those agents in this case just built in right up here up front as widgets in Port. As I mentioned, I could have a Slack app that allows me to interact with these agents as well. I don't have that set up today, but very much the exact same workflow where you ask questions and the agent responds. The other way to do it is via MCP. And so I want to show you that as well. And I've got a couple of examples here, and I'm going to start with Claude. So I have some code open here. I've got Claude, or excuse me, Cursor, not Claude. I'll do Claude in a second. But I've got this plugged into my my MCP server here for Port, again in that repo, and I'll share the repo again in a second. But we have, in this case, I'm using a Docker container to run the MCP server locally, and you can see the different types of tools that are exposed by that server. It's open source, as I mentioned earlier, so you have access to it, and you can run it. But let's say that I do want to run this agent, or excuse me, run this a query from Cursor into Port. So in this case, I've got this payment gateway. Maybe I want to figure out, like, how do I actually connect to this payment gateway? Am I doing things the right way? So I want to get some information out of Port, because Port should have the ownership about the payment gateway. And so I am going to ask a question, right? I need to know more about the payment gateway. Are there any details about it in Port? And we'll see. Hopefully this works. You can kind of see a little bit of how this is tracking here. Again, with Cursor, you also have, I think Cursor, well, at one point they called it YOLO mode. I think they've sort of changed that now. But you can also have this approve every step along the way, so you can kind of see what it's doing. And before it does anything, it will ask you if it's okay to do those things. I've got mine set to just, go through, just do stuff for me. But you can still track and sort of see what it's doing here as it's working. But you'll see it's come back and said, okay, yes, the payment gateway service, I know who has that. We have a team. We have a team in GitHub as well. And so I've got a contributor here, Michael Brown. I've got an on-call person, Jane Doe. So if I want to go ask questions, I now have some information about the person or people who own that. Maybe I want to know, who is now I've got the information. If I want to go figure out how to use the payment gateway service, I could go ask them, or I could follow up with additional questions and see if there are API docs or if there are other documentation that's available. Anything that's important, I could ask here in Cursor, and it now has access to it. Again, controlled by by the user limits, right? So what is this user allowed to do? What information can they access in Port? And if they can't access that information in Port, then the agent's not going to be able to access it and sort of subvert those requirements either. So that's one example. Another is Claude, and I'll show you that here real quick. And as I was kind of playing around with this one, I was looking through some other examples that are out there, and I saw Wiz's. Wiz has a nice example with their MCP server where there's really three examples here. They do some troubleshooting. They use Cursor and they use Claude as well. But in this example, I'll blow it up so you can see it a little bit better. They were doing some troubleshooting on some systems that have internet exposure that also have a high data risk score. And what they ended up with here is, creating a summary, asking, in Claude, create a summary of this issue, give me a URL, I'm going to send it off to somebody else for investigation. But one of the things that I, have heard often from folks is they'd like to just be able to start tracking, like who owns that system, who's responsible for making those changes. And, to that end, is there maybe already work in progress to see if those changes are sort of coming down, coming through the pipeline. And we actually have access to that information. So imagine instead of that, creating a report there. I don't have that exact service import, but let's say this was affecting the service called Robot Shop import. And so I've got Claude here connected into port. And it's going to go and look and see, okay, well, who has the Robot Shop service? It's the shopping team. So I can go track down the shopping team and I could ask them. But Port also has information from our repos and from our pipelines and from other places. Maybe there's already some security fixes that are in progress, just waiting for review or waiting to be pushed or deployed. So I can ask that as well. Any security fixes in progress for the Robot Shop related to the data exposure issues. And so we'll have the investigation done here as well. So we'll ask Claude. Claude will use the MCP server to connect to Port and do its investigation and see what it can find related to any of those issues. Now I have a number of security tools plugged in, so it's kind of searching through all of them and searching through GitHub pull requests, see check marks scans, kicks scans as well, and we'll see what it finds. There we go. So we've got a couple of active security fixes in progress for the Robot Shop. So now I can see those as well. So I don't have to just stop and see that there's this issue and I've diagnosed it. Now, as a security person, I may not know a lot about Port. I may not know how to dig through the information or how the software catalog is organized or any of those kinds of things. But the information I do want is, who is the team? Are they working on this issue? Is there something that, can be pushed forward or escalated to get it done a little bit faster? And I can see that there's a couple of security fixes in progress. I can dive into those and sort of prompt the team to get those done quicker. Again, sort of taking it to that next level and tying all these different tools together in a really, really nice way. So those are just a couple of examples. I'm sure there are loads of other use cases that you have that you encounter every day. We'd love to to set you up with those things in Port so that you can play around with them as well. We'd love to hear what you're building and the kinds of use cases you have for AI agents, for MCP, and just for Port in general as well. All right. A couple other things I do want to show you before we wrap up today. So I mentioned that there's some new customization options in the last few months. Like I said, there have been loads of customization options that have been added to Port. I'm going to come in and let's look at let's do repositories. This one doesn't really make it that much difference which one I choose. But let's say, okay, in Adobe Portal here, I've got this entity page, and we've been doing a lot of work to just customize these entity pages, or really to enable you to customize these entity pages to make them look and feel the way you want. So this is new overview page, which you can customize and add whatever widgets you want to the overview page. And really sort of reorganized, sort of the tabs here. All of this is totally customizable. But I can also add new dashboards here as well. So maybe I have a cool dashboard that I want to add. I can add multiple dashboards here, and now every repository is going to have these cool dashboards. And let's say I'm just going to do a number chart to keep it simple. And let's count something. Let's count pull requests. Let's do a count. And I don't really care about the unit of measure. All right, let's look and see what we get here. And so we've got, this. Is this a useful chart? Probably not, but nonetheless, you can see that you can do this. And now every repository is going to have this dashboard as part of its part of its overall overview page. And so I can create these, I can customize these pages all I want. I could do more. And one of the previous dashboards you saw for the DORA metrics, we had this pink and it had a little warning message in there. And that's a new thing that you're able to do here as well too. So the bottom of this is a number chart. Remember, I'm just in this one, just counting pull requests. But I can add a condition here and say that if I have more than, let's say, 2 pull requests, I want to say starting to pile up, and I want it to be yellow. So let's do that. All right, so we see this is now changed because I have 3 pull requests here. If I go over here, let's look at one that's a little more active. So I have the cool dashboard on this one too. In this case, I have 14 pull requests, and maybe that's a different level of danger. So I want to add another condition here, and we'll say if it's greater than whatever 8, then a stronger message, right? And we'll make it pink. Right. So you can customize these. Again, in your overall design of your interface here, you can decide how you want to use these and where these kinds of widgets and charts to go. But the new options for customizing all of these dashboards and things, customizing the entities and what's shown there, and again, really making it fit your organization's workflow and your organization's DNA. A couple other things I'll show you here real quick too. So you'll notice here I have a button called free money. If you're familiar with our self-service actions in the past, they basically the create actions always default with a create button. The day 2 operations always default with an execute button. There's a default for those, and they're not always things that make the most sense. So you now have the ability to customize those buttons to say whatever you want, right? So I made this one say free money to encourage people to run my developer satisfaction survey, in this case, and try and prompt them to do more. The other thing that we have here is the ability to add, if you're familiar with self-service action forms and with survey forms and other things that use essentially those same templates. You may be familiar with the fact that we have text fields that in the past have been fairly short, 1 line of text, basically. We can now have fields that are actually longer text. So lots of times people want to capture all kinds of details. You want to copy and paste things from some form or somewhere else. And so you can do that. So I can say I have multi-line text here. I can specify minimum and maximum lengths. If I save that, they didn't save, but nonetheless, you get these longer text fields in there as well. And then the last thing I'll show you here as well is the action and action approvals. I don't have too many there, so I'll show you over here. So with actions, again, if you're not familiar with the self-service actions, you can allow actions. People just run actions. Come in and click a button, fill out the form, or maybe it automatically populates the form for you, and they can run that action. And it can just go and start doing things. In other cases, you want the actions to require some approvals. Maybe you're the person that has to approve things. Maybe it's a team lead for the engineering group. Whatever the case may be, you can determine that workflow. But we wanted to make it super easy to see all of the things that are waiting on you for your approvals, and so you can now see that in your view of port. So if you go up to the little clock widget, you'll see your latest runs, which is the actions that you've kicked off and whether they may still be executing or they've just completed in your recent history. But you can also see actions that are waiting on you to approve, something that somebody else kicked off that needs you to approve it for it to finish. And so you can see all those in one little spot here as well. Okay. As I mentioned, there are loads of other updates this past month. We do have tons of new guides. These are just the ones that were published in April. There are many more that have come in May. And we continue. Some of these are improvements to existing guides to show more examples and different kinds of blueprints and all those kinds of things that people have shared with us. And we want to share those with you. Some of these are brand new guides to help get things done even faster. But encourage you to use those and use those guides. Remember too, we talked last month, all these have examples, and in all those examples, there's a button now where you you've always been able to copy the code and you could, manually bring it over into port, but now there's a button that allows you to uh, to to create directly in port. So you click a button and it will create the blueprint for you straight from the docs. So lots of great examples there. Many new changes to integrations, as I said before. So lots of things that are sort of always in progress. I do encourage you to use our roadmap. It's available publicly, port.io/roadmap or roadmap.port.io. Either one of those will work and get you to the exact same place. You can add ideas to the roadmap. You can vote for other ideas in the roadmap. You can track the status of those ideas. So if you vote for something or if you added something, when and if it's released, you'll get a notification that it's released and available in details, and you get a response from our product management team directly. The release notes are available in the same place, so roadmap.getport.io or roadmap.port.io. Either one of those will work these days. But on the change log there, you'll have all of our release notes. So we just covered some of them here today, but you can get the full details on the release notes here at this URL. And as I mentioned, the implementation guides and the specific guides for things are available in our docs as well. For those of you going to AWS Summit in New York City, hope you'll come see us there. It's July 16th, so not too far away. We'd love to see you. We'll have a big booth there, and come by and stop by and say hello to us. And with that said, I will wrap things up. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will end things here today, and I appreciate it.